And I started doing some of my impressions. Unbeknownst to me, Star Search scouts, remember Star Search years
Yep.
ago? It was like Star Search scouts were in the audience to see all those other comics, the real comics after me. And they saw me and they put me on the show. And Donna Summer was clicking the channels and she sees this wacky woman on Star Search and she calls her manager and she says, "Get me that girl to be my opening act." And that's how my career started.
Divine alignment and Godwinks, one after another.
So now, please welcome the official, non-official, non-sponsor of the Savannah Bananas, but a big fan. Please welcome John Fletcher.
Thank you, my friend Jesse Cole, owner of the Savannah Bananas, and welcome to this Friday's edition of 15 on Fridays with Fletch. I'm a huge fan of today's guests because I've read their books, watched their movies, and I read their devotionals. We're talking about the folks who created Godwinks books and Godwinks Christmas movies that were #1 on Hallmark every Christmas season. Squire Rushnell was a successful TV executive who led Good Morning America to first place for the first time and shared 75 Emmy Awards as the father of Schoolhouse Rock on ABC. He also became a legend in children's TV programming. And his wife, Louise DuArt, is one of the most recognized comedic impressionists and worked with TV legends Carol Burnett, Tim Conway, Harvey Korman, and more. So Squire and Louise have produced a dozen books and 5 movies, with the 4 on Hallmark reaching the #1 faith movie at Christmas for several years. Welcome to the 4th edition of Godwinks on 15 on Fridays with Fletch. We're talking with Louise DuArt and Squire Rushnell, who created the entire concept of Godwinks. Louise, you've had quite the career as a comedian, or a comedian, I guess you might say. You've been called one of the world's best comedic impressionists. I've seen you impersonate Joan Rivers, Judge Judy, Cher, and even George Burns. How much practice does it take to learn a new subject?
Well, it varies. There are like Joan Rivers was kind of easy for me because I just love Joan so much. And Joan has got one of the very distinctive voice. You know what I'm saying, John? Very. Can we talk? Can we talk? Very distinctive. She's bigger than life. When they're bigger than life, it's easier to latch on like Katharine Hepburn. She's always, she's got a very interesting voice, but of course she's bigger than life too. She is. And of course, George Barnes. George Barnes was one of my favorites. I love George. And Cher was fabulous. Cher is like so great. If I could turn back time. And I wish she would turn back time and stop getting so much of this. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. So it varies, but it has been so much fun to do. And it actually started, believe it or not, God uses everything. I know it's hard to believe, a painfully shy kid. My mother, very Italian, she would say, children should be seen and not heard. And, I took that literally. So I was very quiet, but I would look in the mirror because I loved all these celebrities and I would pretend I was somebody else. And when I was a kid, I would do it for my friends, all these voices, and they'd say, "Oh, wow, that's great. Can you do my mother's voice?" And I do the mother's voice. And then I started calling up the nurse's office, getting them out of school for the day until I got busted. But I thought, all of a sudden I became popular because I could do all these voices, "Oh yeah, call Louise, she'll do some voices for you." So as when I started doing it for a living, and it was only on a bet and because of desperation. Talk about all things work together for good. My husband at that time, I say, this is the good husband. My husband at that time was one of those stories. He leaves me for another woman, and I've got 2 kids. I have no money. And I say to my friends, I'm living now in California, my friends in Woodland Hills, California, who are also prayer warriors, my sisters in Christ. I said, "Oh my gosh, my husband left me. What am I going to do?" And we prayed about it. And Diane Severino, one of my neighbors, said, she was from Brooklyn. "Hey, Lou, you do all those voices for us. Why don't you go down to one of those comedy stores and see if you could do this for a living? And I looked at her like her cheese had slipped off the cracker. I said, I'm a housewife in the San Fernando Valley, used to be married. I said, I'm not going to go down to one of those sleazy clubs and try to do this for a living. And they said, we bet you $50 you don't have the guts to do it. And I thought, well, $50 is $50. The next day, on a Monday, I drove down to the comedy store, the world famous comedy store on Sunset Boulevard. And it was where famous comics like, oh my gosh, every single one of them, you name it, Robin Williams and so many others got their start. And it was open mic night. And they would have all the comics up there. But then before the real comics, you'd have the wannabe comics, and they'd give you a couple of minutes and you'd get up there. And, so I was the only girl, all these guys, and I was the last one up. So I'm sweating bullets, and then they call me up on stage and I'm thinking, Jesus, if the rapture could come now, it would be fabulous. And I started doing some of my impressions. Unbeknownst to me, Star Search scouts, remember Star Search years ago?
Yeah.
It was like Star Search scouts were in the audience to see all those other comics, the real comics after me. And they saw me and they put me on the show. And Donna Summer was clicking the channels and she sees this wacky woman on Star Search. And she calls her manager and she says, get me that girl to be my opening act. And that's how my career started.
Divine alignment and Godwinks, one after another.
Tell us about working side by side with Carol Burnett and Tim Conway.
Oh, well, I got to meet Carol and then I got to do a little work with Carol. But my main squeezes were Tim Conway and Harvey. And when they asked me to kind of be, let's just put it honestly, the cheap version of Carol Burnett when we were on the road. Every night I'd have to pinch myself to think, I can't believe these are my heroes. And what was so wonderful is that, you can look at someone and say, oh gosh, they're my heroes. I love them. But then when you meet them, maybe they're not so nice. Tim and Harvey were nicer than you even saw on television. They had a great friendship and they welcomed me in like their sister. And they were very protective of me. And I have to say, and then they love SQuire. When I said SQuire's going on the road with us, it was a little difficult because we had our little clique, we'd go all places and now SQuire's coming in. SQuire became like one of the guys. And it was just one of the most beautiful things. And my son, Danny, ended up being engaged to Harvey Korman's daughter. Believe it or not, they met when we were in Boston, and then they were together for a year. They were going to get married, and the day before they were going to get married, Harvey died.
Oh.
And so we're all at Harvey's house, and the doorbell would ring, and there'd be wedding gifts. And then the doorbell would ring and there'd be flowers, sympathy. Well, what they did is they took the wedding that was going to be done at Harvey's house anyway and made it into a celebration of life. And so all the wedding guests were people that, knew them. And it was a sad time. And Danny and Harvey's daughter stayed together for another year. And then I think that it was just too much for her to bear, and they called it off. But it was a beautiful time. It really was. It was bittersweet to honor someone that we love so much.
What's your favorite story aside from that one, which is beautiful, about those times in comedy and traveling?
Oh my gosh. Well, one of the things that happened to me, and it's again how God uses everything. I'm a little claustrophobic because when I was a kid, we were playing hide and go seek, and I thought, oh, I'll be the smart one, and I went into Annette Sarakia's closet in her house. It was a like a coat closet for winter coats, and I jammed it. I thought they're never going to see me for a while. Shammed it, and I couldn't get out. And I was stuck in this. It was like an August day, it's humid.
There
I
was no
couldn't
knob
breathe.
on the inside.
No knob on the inside, and I'm
Ooh.
locked in an elevator for hours.
No, it seemed like you were locked in an elevator. You were still in the closet.
But right, but I was like, right. So, oh yes, thank you, Squire. So what happened was, that's how my elevator bit came. So what happened was, years later, I'm in an elevator and it stops. And I go back to that memory as a little girl being in Annette Sarakia's closet, and I start panicking. And there's people in the elevator. And I know that when I do a voice, I have to get outside myself and focus in on that person, the body language, where placement of their mouth, how they place the words and all. And I said to people in the elevator, I'm going to do something that's going to sound very strange, but I'm going to become different people right now. And all of a sudden, I'm like Edith Bunker, like, I'm stuck in this elevator and can't get out. Oh, Archie, my goodness. And so I'm doing all these characters, and people are standing there, they can't move. And I'm like a crazy loon. And then the elevator doors open and they start applauding. And I thought, you know something? Maybe I've got a bit in here from my. And I put 25 celebrities in an elevator, and Popeye eventually, they go back and forth. That's where Judge Judy and Joan's in there, and Fran Drescher, and eventually Popeye gets him out. Well, close me down, I'll close the doors down. So he gets them out. So 25 celebrities in an elevator, and it became my tour de force. And I think that opened up a lot of doors for me. With Donna Summer, she saw that elevator bit, and Tim and Harvey saw it. And so out of a bad thing, God would use that.
Yeah.
Y'all inspire people through your gift shop as well. So tell us about the gift cards, the Godwink hats, like this one right here, the jewelry, and more.
Well, Godwink.com, Godwinks with an S on it, .com is, if you go there, you have access not only to our Winkletters, which is a twice weekly letter that we send out with stories that are memorable, but also in the shop, you can window shop all of the books. We now have 13 books. The 13th was the one on Godwinks on Mom, and we always say to people, you can window shop the books, pick out what you want, and then go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any place else, and buy it cheaper there.
Or sometimes we do our deals.
Yeah.
We do deals.
Yeah,
We'll do
but-
2-for-1s or whatever.
So we realized that we also, if we can't afford to do that, but if we would give our customers greater value, then they would maybe go to the shop and take a look. And so we decided that if we could create a line of gift cards, all related to Godwinks, all occasion cards, some Christmas cards, sorrow cards, congratulations cards, teamwork cards, all that kind of thing, that what we will do is that people can pick out one of these cards anytime they buy a book, and they get the card for free. It comes with the book with a little envelope in it, so that if you want to give this book as a gift to someone who has just lost someone, you got the sorrow card right there, and it has a nice message of condolence right in the card. So all of that, plus these books.
And those are free. The cards are free.
The cards are free. But the books are also there, but hats. The Godwink hats, that's the only place in America that you can buy them.
In addition to that, tell us about your name, your spelling. You've got a capital Q in addition to the capital S. Tell us about that. So that's not a typo.
No. Well, let's start with the fact that Squire is a weird name. It's particularly weird for a child, which is why when my mother gave me her last name, Erica Mafana Redwood Sedgemore Squire, that's all on her birth certificate. She gave me that last name as my first name. But she also realized that it wasn't very good for a child. And so she gave me, she always called me Derek, which was my middle name, because that's a forceful name. Derek, get down here. The other name was Dickie. Now, that was just my name, and everybody in my hometown knew me as Dickie Rushnell. Some really knew me intimately, and they knew it was Dickie Derek Rushnell. And so when I was 11, I went off to get my Social Security card, which required my hitchhiking 10 miles up the road and then coming back down. And I showed my mother something I was very proud of, that I had gone and gotten my Social Security card.
Mhm.
It was Dickie Derek Rushnell. And my mother said, honey, sit down. There's something I have to tell you. And she told me my name was Squire Derek Rushnell. And my first comment was, don't tell the guys. But it only took about maybe a week for me to say, I think this is cool. I think that maybe this is going to be an asset in my life. And my last conversation with my mother was, thank you, Mother, for my name. I really think, Mother, that when you thought that up and when you gave it to me, you thought, this is going to look good on a door or maybe on a book cover. Well, Mother, you made me live up to that, because I finally got a door at ABC that had my name on it. And you have given me the title name on the book.
But the
author.
capital Q is a whole nother story.
Well, capital Q was another story, because when I'm going to do another prop here. When I was at ABC, I would always sign memos with just capital S, capital Q. And everybody knew that. That was my initial. And back then we didn't have, emails and texts. So I'd write right on somebody's note, and by hand, and then I'd capital S, capital Q. Now, when my daughter, Hillary, my youngest daughter, was going into college, or she was actually in college up at Ithaca, she had the summer off and she didn't have a job. And I said, you know what? When my secretary goes on vacation, you can come and sit in for her, okay? So there she was on the 37th floor at ABC, and I outside my office, and she was typing letters and, responding to letters and so forth. And as she was writing, she was thinking a marketing question, because she was studying marketing in college. So she came into my office and she said, Dad, the little Q looks funny. Everybody knows you're the big Q guy. Why don't we give you a big Q and then you'll have a logo? And I said what any father would say to a daughter, whatever you think, honey.
So that's how
And
capital
that's
S,
how I got
capital
capital
Q.
S, capital Q. And it gave me a secret joy when, email came along and AOL and all those things, that I had something that I could defy spell check. It was always changing my word spelling.
I know it. Yeah, absolutely. So what's next for SQuire and Louise?
Well, we are on hold right now. We can't tell you where, and we can't even tell you what, but we've got 2 series that have a verbal go ahead. but we're waiting for the um, paperwork to get done. And something happened with the buyer where one of those big corporate things are now taking place where they got to put everything on hold. Everybody is on lockdown while these two companies merge together. And so what we want to do is those two series, and both series has a companion book to it. And so that'll be something really new for us to produce a series and a book that works simultaneously with each other.
Is there any chance that we'll see y'all working out a new routine and perform with the Savannah Bananas?
You know, I've kind of put my wigs and costumes. They're in a little room down in our basement. It looks like a morgue when you walk in there. You see all these heads with wigs and the only time I've been able to dust the old act off was with Squire, if it's for a charity.
Yeah.
He sometimes can get me to do it, but you know, I kind of put that on hold because let's be honest, John, all the people I do, how many people know them these days? You know what I mean? How many people know Kate or George Burns or even Joan Rivers? So yeah.
But
And I'm not about to work on Lady Gaga and a bunch of other ones. I'm not doing it.
but I always tell my wife that even if they don't know George Burns or Katharine Hepburn, they're funny and the jokes are funny. And so, you know, kids always, when she was doing her act at Tim and Harvey, at the Tim and Harvey show, all the kids were usually in the front row. You know, people would buy tickets so they could bring their kids. They would be in the front row to watch Tim and Harvey. And so it was a good opportunity for me when Louise would go on stage to watch the kids, and they laughed just as much as they laughed for those two other guys.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Squire Rushnell and Louise DuArt, for joining us for 15 on Fridays with Fletch, the program that began with the intent of having one episode, ended up with 4. So thank you all so much.
Ending Friday with Fletch.
Yeah.
What is it? 15 with Fletch.
That's
Yeah.
right. Supposed to be 15 and now it's 60. So thank you all so much. This has been great. I look forward to seeing y'all again soon.
God
All
bless
right,
you,
you take
John.
John.
Great
All right.
talking with you.
Great to see you again.